Hello, welcome to another episode on Think About It, where we talk about different issues, important issues that impact our society. My name is Rick, and I have with me Edris.
How we doing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we're still doing our courtship series, From Courtship to Maybe I Do. It's been an interesting series. We're talking about different stages of courtship, from singleness and all that kind of stuff, from parenting. And now today, what do you have for us, Edris?
Well, today we going to talk about something that, last week we talked about the first step into the 7 steps to a godly marriage. So today we're going to talk about step number 2.
Okay.
So last week we talked about the first step, which was, is God calling me to marriage?
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about step number 2.
What's step number 2? I want to hear that part.
Step number 2 is, am I prepared for marriage?
Yeah.
Am I prepared for marriage? So we're going to get a little bit into that and talk a little bit more. And hopefully you all can learn something and we can apply it in the life.
Am I ready for marriage? I like to hear that. So a lot of times, if I find a girl, I may think I'm ready, right? So
yeah,
I want to hear more detail about that. So am I ready for marriage? How does a person determine that?
So it's I'm glad you went straight to it. First, we have to understand, right? We talked about this before. The very first thing that someone has to do is build a relationship with God, right? And it's as you build that relationship with God, you know how God speaks to you. So then when you have questions like, am I ready for marriage? Then you're going to counsel with God.
Yeah.
You're going to counsel with God first. Of course, and we talked about counseling with your parents, God-fearing parents. And if you don't have, for those who don't have God-fearing parents, we talked about maybe men and women of experience in the church whom you connect with that have gone through the path that you're going through and that have a relationship with you that knows you and who you are, and you can ask them and they can help. And of course, to much prayer as you ask God to reveal these things to you. And we talked about God, asking God to point you to specific texts in the Bible that relates to your situation that can help you find the answer to these questions.
Okay, so now let's say, I finish asking God, for all these questions or whatever, and I see a young lady that I'm interested in, etc. Is that at that point that I'm determining, am I ready for marriage?
Nah, the readiness for marriage is something that begins long before you even see a potential partner, long before you even begin to think about marriage. There's a quotation that I like to use. It's found in a great book, I think, that you all should read. It's a book called Messages to Young People. So in page 466 of that book, in paragraph 2, it says that it is by faithfulness to duties in the parental home that the youth are to learn or to prepare themselves for homes of their own. And, it's there that they have to learn to practice the things that they're going to implement in their own homes.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Because like we talked about that before. And I think singleness, the one we did on singleness, how that preparation is done at a very young age. So now, am I prepared for marriage, right? So what are some of the criterias that somebody will need to know that will tell them that, yes, I'm ready now for marriage? Okay.
So first thing, right? So we first step was, is God calling me to marriage, right? So we talked about how you find the answer to that. For those who wants to know, refer back to the video.
Yeah.
Once you have asked all those questions, right? You have got the answer to that question, right? Then you move to the next step, right? The next step is, am I prepared for marriage? There's a lot of things that goes into play when we talk about preparation for marriage. It's, are you practicing? Have you mastered love and self-control?
Yeah.
Which we talked about that more in depth in another video. Go back and check out that video so you can get all that information. Yes. So have you mastered love and self-control? Bearing responsibility, service, all these things, right? Once you master these things, then okay, to a certain degree, you are prepared for marriage. And of course, as you counsel with God and God is answering you through specific text that he sends toward your way, people he sends toward you to kind of help navigate you toward knowing, okay, all right, now I know that I'm prepared for marriage. And then there's other stuff that plays into preparation for marriage, right? So today we're going to look at 4 specific things, right? Before we looked at love and self-control, right? And when we looked at love, right, before, we know that love is manifested in 3 things, right? It was obedience, service, and bearing responsibility. I don't know if you remember when we talked about that in the last video.
Especially obedience, I remember these things, yeah.
And then we also talked about self-control, right? Self-control, we talked about self-control in the area of appetite.
Yeah.
We talk about self-control in the area of passion, and we talk about self-control in the area of affection.
Man, just before you go, I know we mentioned that in the last thing. It seems like a lot of people in our society are not ready for marriage because a lot of people don't have self-control.
Yeah, self-control is a big thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing, and that's why it's so important before, not when you get to the marriage, but before you even start courting someone, that you are already practicing self-control. You know, and then once you have that down pat, now leading to your marriage, there's certain things that you've already been practicing them your whole life, then you're not gonna have a problem controlling yourself.
Yeah.
And self-control plays a big role in the marriage, because we know there's a lot of, all right, we're not gonna get into that.
No, we won't get into that. But yeah.
But there's a lot of things that play into that. So I mentioned that there's 4 things, right, we're gonna talk about today that's very important that young people need to have these things in place to know before they get into a courtship, to know that they prepare for marriage.
Okay. What are those 4 things?
So the first one is to be ready physically, right? We talk about to be ready. Also, the second thing is to be ready emotionally.
Okay.
The third one, to be ready financially.
Yeah.
And then the last one is to be ready spiritually.
Okay.
So these 4 things, I mean, we're gonna dive into them a little bit more in depth to see what each of them look like.
Okay. So how does a person recognize you're ready physically?
So physically, good. So right now, right, one of the things that we find, right, sometimes in marriage, right, and I see this, and I have experience, I've seen people get into divorce because as they get into the marriage, they realize that this person had an illness that they never knew about. Had a physical impairment. Like, I know this guy who divorced his wife because she couldn't have children. And these are like health issues, physical health issues that she had prior to the marriage, and she knew about, and they never talked about it.
Man, as you speak about that, there was a sad story I read one time. It was this guy, like he married a woman and was trying to have kids for a long period of time, and he couldn't have kids. And I think eventually they went to the doctors, and I guess I don't remember what happened, but the doctor came and talked to him and says, "Look, this person was not born a woman." You know what I'm saying? That was crazy. Man. That was crazy when I read that. It was devastated, man. So as you're speaking about like the physicality of it, you know, especially in the time that we're living in this generation, you really have to know. Yeah. You know, like in terms of like, who is this person physically?
Yeah, listen, man. I always tell young people, man, the first time you ask someone out and y'all go out, you gotta ask to see baby pictures.
Yes. That's how we say you gotta know. You need baby pictures. You need, and I think that's actually one of the reasons too. You mentioned like you have to know the parents also. I think it's important to go to talk to the parents and like to talk to people that know that individual to know their background, because you don't want something like that to happen to you.
You don't want to date. You don't want to start courtship blindly. That's why we talk about all these things, right? When we talk about counseling, counseling God, right, and then counseling with your God-fearing parents, counseling with the other person's God-fearing parents as well.
Yeah,
you know, because imagine you get into a situation like that. That's devastating. You know, you've already committed to this person for life, and now you find out they weren't born a woman.
Yeah.
That's a shocker.
Yeah.
But that's all part of being. Am I prepared for marriage? Like when we talk about physically, you know, we have to exercise.
Yeah.
We have to eat properly. You know, we have to eat, you know, healthy. Yes. Right. So that we are healthy.
Yes. Speaking about that, we have a podcast done by some of our friends.
Yes.
Talking about nutrition. So check that out. You know, we'll probably put a link down there. You know, proper nutrition. You know, you gotta eat good. You know, keep your mental health.
Exactly.
Correct, you know, so that's part of that physical preparation. Yes.
And then of course, one of the other things that's key too is sleep. Man, with this new generation, people don't really sleep. People are up at all hours of the night. You know, you have someone that's up till like 4 or 5 in the morning, and you wake up the next day, you only get like 3-4 hours of sleep.
That's not good.
That's, you know, when you're young, you know, even your body you may be able to do it, but it's gonna catch up to you when you get older.
Yeah.
And all these things, eventually they affect your marriage.
Yeah.
They affect your marriage because if you don't get the proper sleep, you don't do the proper exercise to keep yourself healthy, and you're not eating healthy, then you may put yourself in vulnerable position to where now you're gonna get sick. And guess who's gonna have to deal with the sickness is your spouse in the marriage.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, right, doing with a sick spouse bring a lot of burden upon the other one.
Yeah.
The other partner. And this can ultimately lead to divorce.
Yeah. And I like that, man. Like, because I think that's part of the one of the 8 laws of health. That exercise, we have to exercise. And a matter of fact, too, exercise actually does impact your mental health.
It does.
Like if you're saying somebody who doesn't have a lot of sleep, it impacts the way they think. Yeah. So now when they wake up in the morning, they may say the wrong things to their to their spouse. So you have all these different issues going on. And if the more we take care of our body physically, the more that will help us in our mental state for our marriage. Yeah. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we don't have much time, so we got to move to the next one, right? So emotionally, right? We talk about emotionally. So when we talk about emotion, we're talking about having emotional intelligence. Somebody says earlier, relational intelligence, knowing how to deal with people.
Yeah.
And these are things that you learn, again, we talk about in the parental home. How do you deal with your father? How do you deal with your mother? How do you deal with your brother? How do you deal with your sisters? How do you deal with your cousins? How do you deal with your friends?
Yes.
These are all things that are preparing you for when you are dealing with a spouse.
Yeah. Sometimes people think, I can have a bad relationship with my brother, with my sister, with my parents or whatever, but I'm going to have a wonderful relationship with my husband or with my wife, right? It's nonsense.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Because the thing is, again, sometimes we don't view things like as simple as God wants them to be. God wants things to be so simple. That's why God gives us the family home, right? It's where parents have an important role that they play too, right? In the upbringing of the child, to teach the child to be responsible, knowing how to manage their emotions, deal with their emotions, deal well with their setbacks, deal with their failure, deal with their success, and all that stuff. And all that plays an important role to when they get married.
Yeah,
it's when you in the parental home, you have to learn these things, like. When you really want something, right? Let's say you want something bad and then your dad says no. How do you deal with that?
And one thing you mentioned about the emotional intelligence also imply that you are not only focusing on yourself.
No.
Like emotional intelligence, I may be talking to you right now, right? And I realize suddenly, something changes for you. Like you probably look at a text message and your face changed.
Yeah.
So now I could say, you know what? Yo, you okay?
Yeah.
That's emotional intelligence, like noticing that something has changed, but I have to be focusing on the person. And that's one thing in marriage, a lot of times, like, as you're speaking about, people are not emotionally intelligent. They're not aware of what's going on with with the person they're courting.
Yeah.
They can't see the differences, the changes. And if it just show like you don't really care about that person because you don't see even the subtle changes. So yeah, I do agree with that.
You hear that a lot, especially women, saying things to their husband like, man, you never listen.
Yeah.
You never like. I feel like I have to keep repeating and saying things to you.
Yeah.
Ladies, I'm gonna say this right now. Men, we only hear about 20% of what you say.
Hey, that's him. He talking about himself. My percentage is much higher, I would hope.
But that's beside the point. But the point is being able to understand the other person.
Yeah.
And putting yourself in the other person's shoes, seeing where they're coming from and trying to empathize and trying to be understanding. And these are all things you learn in the parental home. And when we talk about young ladies, how do you manage your emotion? How do you deal with your emotions, with setbacks, with failures, or with when you're not getting things your way? Do you throw tantrums?
Yeah, that would destroy a relationship, man.
Exactly. Like, and these are things that if all your childhood, throughout your upbringing, every time you experience a setbacks, the way you deal with it is throwing tantrums. What do you think gonna happen in your marriage?
Same thing.
It's the same thing, and it's in the parental home. You have to learn these things. Yeah.
Okay. So we're down to 2. What's the third one?
So the third one is. But before we finish with this one, I had this quotation that I want to read that ties to this, right? It says, and it's very key, and I forgot to mention that point. It says that the young have many lessons, right, to learn, and the most important one is to learn to know themselves. To know themselves. What does that mean? That means a young person, you're not ready for marriage until you know yourself.
That is true. That is true. We're having a conversation about that last night.
Yeah, we did. We had a conversation about that.
Yes.
And when we talk about knowing yourself, leads to different aspects. It's a much broad topic than we think about. Knowing yourself is knowing your purpose in life.
Yes.
And when I say knowing your purpose in life, knowing your purpose, knowing what God's calling is for you, knowing who you are in God.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about, knowing yourself. And you are not ready for marriage until you know yourself.
And not only that, so knowing God, knowing yourself in God, you have your purpose. You're not looking for your identity in somebody else.
No.
To me, that's actually a huge problem. I find that with women and young men, they are looking like, in order for me to be complete, I need to have a husband. I need to have a wife. No, it's not like that. You're complete in God, right?
Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to add, in knowing yourself, basically knowing what ticks you off, what impacts you. For example, if I come home, and I realize, okay, when I come home at this time, I'm feeling down.
Yeah.
Then I know what's happening. I know who I am. I know why I feel the way I feel. So I don't take my burden or stress on somebody else. Because I know myself. And I think when you know yourself, it allows you to be able to have better relationship with other people. Because you know what gets you upset. You know what makes you happy. You're not looking for somebody else to, be responsible for that. Okay, I want you to make me happy. If I don't know how I'm going to be happy myself, how do I expect somebody else to make me happy? You know what I'm saying? So knowing yourself is very important.
As you mentioned that, this thing came to mind. I had this friend, back in the days. When she's hungry, she gets very short, like any little things could throw her off. But she doesn't realize, she wasn't aware that she only gets like that when she's hungry. So she'll be mad about something that's something that's small. And while she's focusing on the thing, no, this and that, and I'm like, let's go get some food. No, I don't want no food. I want. But then as soon as we stop somewhere, we get something to eat, then everything changed. The whole mood changed. Now, what was a problem? She's like, I don't know why I was tripping about this. This was not even that big of a deal. So again, that also plays a role into knowing yourself. Yes. Knowing yourself is knowing that, hey, look, if I'm hungry, it ain't the best time for me to go talk to my partner about this or about any issues at all, because I'm gonna go off.
Yes,
I need to go and eat first and calm down, and then we can have.
And speaking about that, a lot of women, when they get hungry, sometimes they have these situations. You know what I'm saying? They get irritated real quick.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? So like you said, if you're hungry, you're gonna get irritated. It's not the best time to have certain conversation. Yeah. Go eat first, and then have that conversation.
Yeah, and then we give the example of hungry, but there's other examples of other things. Like, for example, I see what sometimes people do. It's like, let's say you have a small situation arise, right? It doesn't, or somebody did something, or your partner did something that you don't like, right? Okay, you know that you don't like it. You can address it while you come, but you wait till he does something else. Then he does something else, and then they keep piling up, and then you got to a point where now you
explode.
When you in your last, he got on your last nerve, then that's when you choose to address the situation. Now, going into addressing the situation, you already angry. Emotionally, you've already feeling all types of way. You're not going into that conversation to at the end of the conversation that we get to a successful conclusion. You going into the conversation to express anger and going crazy at that person. That's why when we talk about knowing yourself, is knowing, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna wait till things pile up before I address things, because if I do that, then I'm not addressing them in a calm manner to where we can come to a solution or a successful conclusion. I'm gonna address things individually as they come, so that we don't have problems.
Yeah, and I'll say this quotation that Paul says, in the word he says, examine yourself, right? We have to examine ourselves in all manner of ways to understand ourselves, understand our behaviors, understand our motivation, so we don't bring burdens to other people and bring misery to the lives of others. So I would come out and say, look, if you are emotionally struggling, you're not ready for marriage.
Nah.
Right? You're not ready for marriage, because it's going to be a problem.
It's going to be a problem. You have, again, that all falls into the self-control aspect of it. You have to learn to control your emotion. You cannot be led by impulse. Because if you are being led by impulse, then you're gonna end up doing something crazy.
Yeah.
Because emotions go up and down depending on what's going on, and we can't let the emotions dictate our action.
And when you like when emotions control you, you may say things you don't mean, and then you can't take it back.
That's why you find a lot of times, you know, I'm sorry I keep saying women, but
men are like that too. They have a lot
men
of
are like that too.
Men who lack self-control.
Yeah, when men lack self-control, they get violent.
Yeah. Some of them don't get violent, but they say like cruel words.
Cruel words. But women are even bigger when it comes to those. Women will say things and they know which button to push. They'll say things, you know, when they're emotionally angry, and then, you know, an hour later when they come down, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean this. And you know, and it's, and you know, as good husband, you have to forgive.
Mercy. You have to have great mercy.
You have to have great mercy. But let it be the other way around. All right, let's not talk about that.
So let's go to the third point.
So again, learning to manage your emotion, right? So third point, right? So third point is learning how, you know, spiritually, to be spiritually ready.
I thought I was so. What about financially ready?
No, we're going to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Financially is the last one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm like, you got to be financially ready too.
Let's talk about spiritually ready first. You have to be spiritually ready. And what does that mean when we say spiritually ready? Before you get into a relationship, I keep stressing on that. Have a relationship with God. Have your own personal relationship with God.
Yes.
You know, spend times daily in the Word of God.
Yes.
Prayer, doing devotions. You know, leading yourself closer to God, because at some point, you know, once you get into a relationship, now you're gonna be, as a man, you'll be responsible to leading your family to God, and as a young lady as well, you'll be responsible to help to assist your husband in bringing up godly children.
Yes.
So you have to be spiritually, you have to be ready for that commitment. Yeah.
So as a young person, you don't want to, because I kind of feel like sometimes we're like that. You want somebody else to help you get closer to God.
That's not how it works. I mean, again, like, okay, let's be clear on that, right? I'm not saying that you cannot, you know, I'm not saying that someone cannot help you get closer, but you have to already be on the path for yourself.
Yes.
Is what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's like you knowing, okay, who you are in God and how God has to be at the pinnacle of your life, at the center of your being. Like every decision that you are making, how you move, how you go about, has to be centered around God.
Pause that again. Your husband should not be the center of your life.
No, God
Your wife should not be the center of your life. Your potential person you're trying to court or fiance should not be the center of your life. God has to be the center of your life.
God has to be.
Because and the reason, like, we probably mentioned that before, if you put your husband or your wife as the center of your life, you're going to be a burden to that person.
Oh yeah.
Because you're going to expect them to do things that they cannot do. It's beyond their capacity. No. You know what I'm saying? So that spirituality that you mentioned, matter of fact, I know when you look at the story of Adam and Eve, I don't know if you mentioned in a prior study, where they first met God, right? The first person Adam met was God. The first person Eve met was God. But you know what happened? When they had that test, Adam switched the role. He allowed his wife to become the center of his life. You know what I'm saying? And what happened? Look at what happened.
Humanity, the whole human race has fallen because of that one mistake. And I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I had that as an example, you know. And even as we're looking at these different things, right? God created Adam, right? And there's a quotation that says that Adam was perfect the way God created him. God gave him an occupation, something to do. When we talk about being prepared, right? God gave him a way to take care of his family. And then in spirituality, God spent times with Adam. Teaching him of his ways, you know, how to go about, how to be, what to do and what not to do. God gave, we can say that God gave Adam his commands. And then he gave Adam instructions to teach this command, not only to his wife, but to his descendants. And God did this thing. And then when God was bringing Eve about, same thing. Adam fell into a deep sleep. Adam didn't know anything. Then God created Eve, right? God spent a long time with Eve while Adam was asleep.
So would you say Adam was single?
Yes.
And then Eve was single.
Eve was single. They both
knew the Lord.
They both knew the Lord before.
the Lord, when they were ready, because we're speaking about, am I ready for marriage, right?
Yes, yes.
After the Lord spoke to Eve separately, he said, okay, now she is ready. Now he brings her into the marriage.
Yes, and it's God who brought them together when God see that they are ready.
Yes,
and when God brought them together and says that for this reason shall a man leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Yes. Now they are put on this journey to becoming one flesh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we're looking at already physicality. We look at like emotional maturity. I could say that. And then now we're looking at spirituality. And the final point we're going to touch is financially readiness. Yes.
You have to be ready financially before you start courting someone. That's all part of the preparation for marriage. Again, we just mentioned it, right? That Adam had an occupation. Adam had a job, a means, a way to take care of his family. And this is something that we see in this day and age. I mean, we have so many broken homes where you see homes with single parent where the mother is doing 2-3 jobs and the father is absent.
It's crazy.
Lack of responsibility, not being ready to have a family, to have children. And as we're looking at the divorce rate in today's society, a lot of divorce happen due to financial reasons.
Is a divorce? And I know you mentioned like a lot of the single motherhood homes. You feel like we talk about that in the last episode, where a lot of people like 18 years old, 19 years old, they're not ready for marriage. They're not financially ready. They're not spiritually ready. They're not emotionally ready. Boom, they get into sexual relationships. Somebody get pregnant. What do you expect is going to happen? Single motherhood.
Yeah.
Single parenting. That's what's going to happen. And so, that financial aspect is very good. You have to be financially ready before you can think of taking somebody else. I mean, think about that. If you can't take care of yourself,
how can you take care of somebody else? Which brings us to a verse that I wanted to, I think in Luke chapter 16, that talks about, it talks about being prepared for marriage, right? So let's read it real quick. Let me find it here. I'm sorry, y'all.
Luke chapter, what chapter are you saying?
Luke 16, verse 12.
Okay.
It says that, and if ye have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? So if you want to have a family of your own, while you in your parents' home, right? While you in the house or in the household that you live in right now, you have to be faithful to the duties in that house. And when we talk about financially, that also plays into that, because if you live somewhere, you have to be financially contributing to the bills.
Yeah.
Do you help your parents with the bills? Are you responsible enough for your parents to trust you to take care of? Maybe you're not able to pay the rent. Okay, you could take care of the light bill.
Yeah.
The water bill.
Yeah.
The cable bill, or whatever the case is. These are things that helps you prepare and be responsible for when you get into a home of your own. You're not gonna let your wife struggle. You're not gonna let your children, go hungry, because you have been practicing these things all your life. You know the burden that you carry as being the head of a household as a man, and also women too, being responsible, being financially responsible, because you are a helpmate. So traditionally speaking, or how God designed it, that the man is the one who brings home the food, but the woman who's the helpmate can also help add to what the man is bringing.
That means like, even as a young woman, you don't want to be wasteful
No.
in how you spend money. Because like sometimes like, you have a man, the man could be working and the woman is like, doesn't have like that control. And she's spending money like crazy, and then the family can save nothing. So we have to be like, if you're a young lady, young man, you have to be financially disciplined. And again, it goes to self-control.
Yeah.
You can't be doing like impulse purchasing.
No.
I just go out there, I see a car at the dealership, and I didn't even have no plan to buy a car. And now, boom, I buy a car. And now, guess what? I can't pay the light bill.
I'm going to tell you like this. If the Amazon delivery guy know you on a first name basis, you ain't ready. Every day the delivery coming, the guy know you personally. Nah, you're not ready. Yeah, I know we're joking, but it's
you're joking. But I remember like I had somebody that had like they got paid a tax return. They got their tax return, right? And when he got the tax return, he went to go back to his account. The wife spent all the money.
Man, it's funny you brought that up. My brother used to have a store, a clothing store, And he told me one time, he was like, the best time for him, best season is income tax season. He watched, these ladies come in the store and spend $6,000-$7,000.
Whoa, that tax return money?
That tax return money,
We got to start a clothing store, bro.
And again, when you talk about like knowing how to manage your spending, when we talk about financially ready, right? Having financial literacy.
Yeah.
And when we get to the marriage, when we do the marriage video, we're going to talk more about how to manage your financial when it comes to a marriage relationship. And for this one, we're talking about the preparation, being prepared for it, having your own bank account, know how to manage your money, know how to save and how to spend, and plan accordingly.
Yeah.
These are all important things. And then we talked about knowing yourselves, right? Part of knowing yourself is knowing what career path that the Lord is sending you to, and how not only you're gonna use that to take care of yourself, but how you're gonna use that to further God's cause as well.
Yes.
So all these things are important. Until young people can learn to master these things, they are not prepared for marriage.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say, you're not coming into a marriage for somebody to take care of you.
No.
You come into a marriage to help somebody else, to grow with somebody else, and to help lead somebody else with yourself to the Lord.
To the Lord.
And that's the whole idea of a helpmeet. Adam and Eve, they were supposed to help each other grow closer to the Lord. And sometimes, like I said, a lot of young people, they think, okay, I'm struggling financially now. I need somebody else to take care of me financially.
Yeah.
I'm struggling emotionally. I need somebody else to take care of me emotionally. I'm struggling physically. I need somebody to take care of me. That is not the way you know that you prepare for marriage.
And and it's crazy how many times I hear young people say, man, the reason why I don't have money right now, it's because I'm not married. I hear that a lot. Like I have a friend of mine who he always said, I'm like, that's not why you're struggling. You're struggling because you have bad spending habits and you don't know how to manage your money.
Yeah.
And being married is not going to help you.
No.
It's not going to help. These are things you need to learn how to do right now. How to and how to manage your money is not based on how much money you're making. It doesn't matter how much you're making. If you're making a little amount, then set your life standard to where you can live below your means. And these are like all about decision making.
And so the last thing I'm going to say about this, right? Because you mentioned spirituality was the third point.
Yeah.
But if you look closely, all of these three other points we mentioned are part of spirituality.
Of course.
Because think about this. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
It is a sin to mistreat your body.
To mistreat your body.
Right? So that's spirituality. Physically, right? Yeah. Emotional intelligence, emotional strength. It is a sign that you don't have the Holy Spirit if you have no control over your emotions.
Exactly.
If you get angry at the slightest thing, like, you unmanageable, ungovernable, that's spirituality.
Of course.
Finances is part of stewardship.
Yeah.
And like you read in Luke, God is saying like you have to manage what you have, what you have been given.
Being a good steward, yeah.
So all of these things really are spiritual preparation.
Of course.
So am I ready for marriage is basically a question, am I spiritually close with God?
Man, I like how you brought that up, man. We were going to leave this for the closing point, but you made it. You might as well close the video right now.
Might as well, drop the mic, right?
Yeah.
All right.
That's it right there. Everything boils down to you being spiritually ready.
Yeah.
And we bring it back again to having that relationship with God, knowing who you are in God, knowing God's word, knowing how to manage yourself, manage yourself physically, manage yourself emotionally, manage yourself, spiritually and financially. These are all things that are important for you to know and to master right now in your singleness before you start a courtship, which would lead to marriage.
Yes. So am I ready to be married? I'm already married. And with that, think about it. We are out. We'll see you next time.